Well, good morning, everybody. This is the news that we are waking up to for Tuesday, March 18th, 2025, day 1119 of Vladimir Putin's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. I'm Peter Alexievich, and last night here in Kyiv, a disproportionate number of drones seemed to be directed at the capital last night. Now, the Russians sent 137 drones. Of that 137, 127 were taken out, which is almost a 92% interception rate. So again, the guys are doing a great job and guarding us in our sleep, right? I got 8 hours of sleep last night, can you tell? Despite the ongoing air alarms. Now, where are we at with the Ukrainian drone programs? So Zelensky has announced the successful testing of a 3,000-kilometer range drone. Now, to me, this is no surprise, right? We've seen hits inside of Russia. The Ufa refinery is 1,400 kilometers from Ukraine, and that was hit and badly damaged recently. So the idea that now Ukraine can hit targets 3,000 kilometers away is impressive and another great example of Ukrainian ingenuity under fire. Zelensky, on this subject, when he made this announcement, said a couple of things. We are developing a line of long-range weapons that will help guarantee the security of our state. I held a staff meeting. There are several key issues, but the most important one is drones. Drones now account, depending where you are on the front line, for between 60 and 80% of all Russian and North Korean casualties. 60 to 80% are being taken out by drones and drone warfare, redefining the very nature of the modern battlefield. We need all types of drones, and there is good news. Our drone has passed the 3,000-kilometer test. We can say that we are satisfied with the results of the strikes, but we need to produce more missiles, more drones, and we will discuss this with our partners this week. And when he says discuss it with our partners, he's not just talking about the Ukrainian defense manufacturing industrial base, but he's also talking about the Europeans. Who he is not talking about are the Americans. Where we are at as a nation in abnegating our responsibilities and privileges in the world is beyond my comprehension. And we'll talk about some of what's been happening today. Now, where are we at with the ceasefire? Well, it appears that Putin is stalling for time. Putin seems to think that time is on his side. But I think, depending on how much control he has over Trump, he may find Trump's attention span is short. Trump is looking for a Nobel Prize. He thinks he can get the two sides here to stop shooting, and it'll guarantee his Nobel. So holding things up may just push Trump too far. I don't know. None of us know, right? Things are still very uncertain. But what we do see is Putin trying to make additions to the current ceasefire agreement that Ukraine has come up with. And some of his alleged concerns included, but were not limited to, the ceasefire monitoring along the front. How do you do that? He's actually suggested a civilian peacekeeping force, an unarmed civilian peacekeeping force. I mean, what good is that going to do in front of the Russian army? You got to be kidding me. So how do you these things are very tricky. When you got two sides that have been shooting at each other for 11 years, it's a very tricky business. And you may have seen reports in the news about the French are ready to send troops. The UK is ready to send troops. Keir Starmer's actually ready to send 10,000 pairs of boots here. I don't talk about that stuff because I honestly don't believe it will ever happen. I don't believe Putin will ever agree to it. Not that, as Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron said this week, they don't get a say. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But it all seems highly improbable to me. What else is bothering Putin? The possibility of Kyiv rearming during the ceasefire, which of course is of concern to Kyiv as well. Both sides will try to do that. What Putin called changing conditions on the ground, namely Russia's recent advances. And what's very disturbing about that last point, right? Like the new reality that Putin wants us all to accept is that the east of Ukraine is now Russia. What's very disconcerting to me is that we're hearing at Trump administration officials repeat those exact same words. The reality on the ground, the new reality on the ground. We're hearing Trump admit those words, Putin's words, from Trump administration officials. Very disturbing. Now, Shibia, the Ukrainian foreign minister, in an interview with RBC Ukraine, outlined the red lines for Kyiv, what they will not accept, what Putin cannot push on them. They will not recognize that the Russian-occupied territories are Russian. That's a non-starter. No compromise on EU and NATO aspirations. The path to NATO is inevitable, despite what Trump says. And no neutered military. One of the big things for Putin, of course, is that Ukraine demilitarized. That has been a stated goal of this war from the beginning. And at this juncture, Ukraine is more militarized than it has ever been in its history as an independent nation. And so that is all good news. Now, this picture is one of my favorite pictures. It is not probably Putin at all. And the reason why we think it's not Putin, but rather one of his body doubles, is he's looking at his watch on the wrong hand. Putin famously wears his watch on his right hand, which is very unusual. And in an interview, this guy actually looked at his left wrist, which is where most people wear a watch. And we don't even know if that's Putin, is basically why I love that picture so much. Now, the big news today is that the call is taking place between these two. What Trump says after this call should be a good indicator of just how in Putin's pocket he is. Because Putin is going to give him his marching orders, or try to. And we'll see whether or not Trump has any independent thought or will following this call. He has demonstrated none to date, despite heavy Republican disapproval for his embracing of the Putin perspective. It is worth noting that this phone call, which could result in the ultimate betrayal of Ukraine, is taking place on March 18th. That's the same day that Russia annexed Crimea, and we saw the first failure of United States foreign policy in dealing with the Ukraine situation. If the United States had held to its guns, done what the Budapest Memoranda demanded of us, and intervened to free Crimea from Russian occupation, we would not be here today. The world would be a very different place. But we let Putin walk away with Crimea. We let Putin start the Donbass war. That's why this country's been at war for 11 years. And here we are today, on the anniversary of this great betrayal, facing perhaps an even greater betrayal. Trump, in all of his bombastic discussions of Russia and taking their side in all things, has had very positive impact on the Russian ruble. It's given new hope, new life to Russia and to the economy in Russia. Additionally, the ruble is performing its best since the summer of 2023 because Trump's actions are also devaluing the dollar. And so as the dollar is devalued in the world, so too all the other currencies rise. This is not an accident. This is very much by design. And I should probably do a separate special report on the economics of this because it's a complicated thing to understand. But as I understand it, what we are looking at right now that Trump is doing in the United States, tanking the stock market, devaluing our currency, alienating trading partners, all of that is right out of the post-Soviet playbook when the oligarchs took all those public assets and divided them up between themselves. Trump is looking at doing the same thing, privatizing the weather service, for example, privatizing the mail service, for example, putting billion-dollar industries into the hands of his friends and privatizing them so that his friends can grift us all and make us all poor. I mean, how anybody sits by and watches this is beyond me. Now, it's not all good news for the Russians. 3 years of war, 3 years of mismanagement, things are bad. I reported last week, or maybe I didn't actually because the lives were canceled. Gazprom, which has seen 2 years of consecutive losses now, as the entire client base has disappeared, just laid off 1,500 more workers. That's 40% of the workers in the facility where they were laid off from. High-level executive jobs down to secretaries. Slash the workforce 40%. What this chart is, this is the MOEX. This is the Russian stock exchange. And you can see it's had a bump in recent weeks. Again, thanks to the inauguration of Donald Trump. However, it is still down a full 30% from its highs pre-war, right? That's a third of the market capitalization having disappeared. That's tough, boy. That's tough. Now, of course, that's far less than the $4 trillion that Trump has made disappear from the U.S. stock market in his less than 60 days as president. But the Russian economy is a much, much smaller economy. It appears as though massive bankruptcies and layoffs are in the cards for the Russian economy over the next 6 months. We're talking about record numbers of bankruptcies. And Olga Petrova, managing partner at Vis-a-Vis Consult, told independent Russian news outlet The Bell, several companies are quietly discussing cutting up to 40 to 50% of contracted staff, including IT specialists, who are normally immune from this kind of thing, right? And these quotes were taken from the Daily Express. Anastasia Ovcharenko, a partner at Contract Intersearch Russia, explained it's likely that IT specialists working on investment projects with uncertain prospects will be let go. These projects will be shut down and resources reallocated, but there won't be a massive wave of tech layoffs. The layoffs are likely to come at the lower level, the real workforce. So Russia is in trouble. It is not having a good time. The world is increasingly destabilized, in large part thanks to Donald Trump, because that's what he wants. He and the Kremlin are the courts of chaos, is what we're looking at. And in terms of international security, we have just received word, I mean, literally it just hit Reuters right before I recorded this. Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia are all withdrawing from the Ottawa Convention against anti-personnel mines, citing the instability of the current security situation. So those countries that border the aggressor nation, the ones who have previously been occupied by the aggressor's forces, are so concerned about what's coming next that they have withdrawn from the anti-landmine treaty and are going to start mining their borders. That's how uncertain the future is. And they're right to do it. I mean, look, nobody wants to see landmines out there. But if you're concerned that the Russians are coming over your border, you better start mining, and you better start doing it now while the Russians are at their weakest. They're not quite at their weakest, but militarily, they're in trouble. I saw a statistic today. The U.S. lost about 11,000 tanks in World War II. The Russians are quickly approaching that number. I mean, I think the last number I saw was 10,350 something. So they're rapidly approaching the level of loss that the United States saw in World War II. The same is true of military personnel. This week, Russia will hit 900,000 lost KIA and WIA, with roughly a third of those being KIA. It's crazy. You know, I mean, if you watch this channel, if you follow me, I'm a person that's, and you probably are too, we're people that are deeply interested in the truth, or, getting as close to the truth as we can. Facts matter to us. And what Trump has done is cut off all that USAID funding. And one of the programs that's been cut now is Voice of America and Radio Liberty Europe. I mean, if you want to know how important these voices, these channels have been to the people behind the Iron Curtain, Ukraine the Latest, the podcast, was taking letters from people who were trapped behind the Iron Curtain during the height of the Cold War and who depended on the Voice of America to give them hope. And we've just taken it away. Right? That light that shines in the darkness, America has put it under a bushel. Let's take a look at what the Russian propagandists are saying on this subject. So this is Zakharova, who's in charge of Russian state TV, basically, right? RT, Russian TV. And she's saying that shutting down these voices in favor of her lies and propaganda is a holiday for her. She doesn't have to compete with them anymore. Solyov says to the 1,200 or so independent journalists who are being fired because of this, that they are disgusting and they should die in a ditch. That's what our enemies think of this move. Now, I'm sorry, but if you're not paying attention to your enemies applauding your actions, then you're a fool. The fact that these guys are on Trump's side says volumes. Now, some good news, right? I found this video on Telegram. Let me share it here. This is a Ukrainian MiG-29 dropping a GBU-39 glided bomb on Russian positions, 4 of them at once. It's quite a hit. Boom. Now, you can see the way that goes off. Those are some kind of cluster munition. Additionally, right, like remember our boy Zelensky says that drones are the most important thing happening out there. Look at this thing. Now, I don't know what that is. It could be a Fab 250 or other guided aerial bomb being attached to a hexacopter, a big industrial size hexacopter, to be dropped on Russian positions. So it's not just the MiGs that are dropping these big bombs, but so are Russian drones, or I'm sorry, Ukrainian drones, which is a remarkable redefining of the battlefield and modern warfare. I have one final drone funny today. It is a bit risque, so not everybody might appreciate it, but I got to tell you, I thought it was hysterical. And when you think of how the Ukrainians suffer at the front line, that they still have this kind of sense of humor, to me, it's remarkable. Can you see that? So anyway, so guys, that's it for me. That's the news that we are waking up to for Tuesday, March the 18th, 2025, day 1119 of Russia's war of choice. Russia's war of choice. I'm Peter Alexievich, and with a little bit of luck, I will be live tonight, but I believe I won't be able to go live until about 5:45 Eastern Daylight Time. So I should be live about 6 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, assuming that my ban is up, which I believe it is. All right, everybody. Thanks. Make it a great day.